The camera feed flickered once. Emily Carr, 34, seasoned nurse, glanced up from her cup of stale coffee and narrowed her eyes at the monitor labeled Room 309. It was subtle, just a momentary flicker. Could have been nothing. Probably was nothing. But Emily had been in this line of work long enough to know that it was always something. Always. She leaned forward, eyes locked on the black and white feed. The hospital-grade bed, the steady green blip of the vitals monitor, and the figure under the white linen sheet, still. Just like every other night. Just like every other week. Just like the last 8 months since she'd taken the job. Mr. Charles Wallace, once a real estate tycoon with properties in 3 countries, was now just a silent man in a bed, held up by machines and mysteries. But something was off. Emily squinted. Was that sheet folded differently? Or was she losing her mind again? The last night shift had ended in her walking straight into the supply closet thinking it was the break room. She hadn't slept more than 5 hours in 2 days. But no. This wasn't exhaustion. Her instincts prickled, the way they did when something wasn't right with a patient, even if the chart said otherwise. She checked the room's door activity on her terminal. Last entry, Doctor has 1702. Last exit, Doctor has 1708. It was now 2:41 a.m. She reached for the mic and called out quietly to reception. Trina, did anyone go into 309 tonight? The response came fast. No, ma'am. Nothing on the logs. You need me to check. Emily hesitated. No. I'll go. She hung up before she could change her mind. The hallway lights buzzed overhead as she made her way toward the private wing. Every step echoed, making her more aware of how alone she was. It was a quiet facility, high-end, discreet. Mr. Wallace had paid for privacy. His family insisted on it. No press, no visitors, and certainly no questions. Still, Emily had questions. She'd had them since day one. Why keep him alive like this, indefinitely? Who exactly was funding the care? Why were the few medical notes so vague? And why, for the love of God, did the man have no photos, no personal items, no one who ever came to see him? Her flashlight flickered slightly as she passed room 307. Room 308. She stopped in front of room 309. The keypad blinked red. She hovered her badge over it, and it turned green with a soft chime. The door unlocked. She stepped inside. The room was cold. Too cold. She felt it in her teeth. The lights were dimmed, the curtains drawn. There he was. Charles Wallace. 82 years old, once called the Ice King in the news for his ruthless real estate dealings. Now, a frail figure beneath linen sheets, his skin pale and thin like parchment, his hands curled inward, unmoving. Except. His eyes were open. Emily's heart skipped. She blinked, unsure. Had she imagined it? No. His eyes were definitely open. Wide open. They didn't flicker or blink. They just stared, right at her. She stepped back instinctively. Everything in her training told her this wasn't possible. The neurologists had confirmed it. The CT scans showed permanent damage. Brain function was minimal. Mr. Wallace was incapable of awareness, speech, or motion. His condition had not improved. At all. Until now? Emily approached slowly, carefully. Mr. Wallace, she said, cautiously. He didn't respond. Didn't move. She stood at the edge of the bed and peered down. His pupils were dilated. His breathing was steady. His vitals on the monitor hadn't changed. Then, beep. The monitor next to the bed emitted a long, flat tone. Not a heart monitor, the ventilator alarm. Her eyes darted to the machine. No obvious errors. No power loss. But something had triggered it. She silenced the alarm and did a quick systems check. Everything looked normal. Her hands trembled as she reached for her penlight. She moved in close, gently lifted his eyelid, and flashed the light. His pupil contracted. He was responsive. She gasped and stumbled back, nearly knocking the 4-pole over. None of this made sense. She needed a doctor. But which one? Dr. Hess? The same man who, for the past 8 months, had told her, there's no chance of recovery? The same man who dismissed every question she'd asked with a cold smile? Something was happening. And Emily wasn't sure who she could trust anymore. She rushed back to the nurse's station, logged into the computer, and accessed Mr. Wallace's restricted medical file. She wasn't supposed to. But she'd never been one to just follow rules when lives were at stake. It took a few tries. The file was heavily encrypted, unusually so for a patient with no visitors. When she finally got in, she froze. Neurological Evaluation Report, March 2nd. Signs of brief ocular responsiveness noted. Possibly reflexive. Not to be documented in patient chart, per directive. What? Why wouldn't it be documented? Another note caught her eye. Staff directive, internal use only. All communication related to room 309 is to be verbal only. No written notes. No updates in the shared system without direct clearance. This is not negotiable. Signed, D.H. Emily's stomach turned. What kind of hospital was this? She printed the notes and stuffed them into her pocket, heart thudding. She'd never violated protocol this badly. But this wasn't about protocol anymore. Something was happening in that room. Something being covered up. She stood up and turned, only to find a man standing silently behind the desk. She jumped, nearly screaming. It was the janitor. Luis. Kind, quiet, always kept to himself. He stared at her for a moment longer than necessary. Then, slowly, he spoke. You saw it, didn't you? Emily froze. Saw what? She whispered. He didn't answer right away. Then he leaned in and said, You're not the first. What do you mean? Luis looked around nervously, then motioned her into the break room. Once inside, he pulled out a folded slip of paper and handed it to her. It was a resignation letter. From another nurse. Dated 6 months ago. I can't keep pretending he's brain dead. He watches me. I swear he watches me. Something is wrong with this place. I'm done. There was no signature. Emily looked up at Luis. Why didn't anyone say anything? They all did, he said. They just didn't stay long enough to be heard. She didn't sleep that morning. When the day shift came in, she handed off her notes like usual, made up a reason to avoid questions, and left in a daze. But her mind kept circling the same things. Mr. Wallace was aware. Someone knew. Someone was hiding it. And she might be next. She went home, showered, changed, and stared at her bedroom wall for a long time. Then she pulled out her phone and did something she hadn't done in months. She dialed her brother, Alan. Still playing detective, he said after picking up. I need a favor, she replied, skipping pleasantries. I need you to find out who really owns the Black Ridge Care Facility. Silence. Emily, are you in trouble? I don't know, she said softly. But I think someone wants to keep Mr. Wallace quiet. Alan sighed. I'll get back to you. She ended the call and looked out her window. The sun was rising, but inside, everything felt darker than it had the night before. Because now, the silence wasn't just eerie. It was dangerous. Emily didn't sleep the next night either. Even with the blackout curtains pulled and white noise humming softly beside her bed, her mind wouldn't shut off. Mr. Wallace was aware. The facility knew. They were hiding it. She kept replaying the image of his eyes, wide open, locked on hers like he recognized her. Like he had been waiting for someone to notice. By noon the next day, her brother Alan sent a message. Blackridge is technically owned by a shell company, Havenhall Group Limited, registered offshore. No public record of actual owners. That's weird for a private medical facility. Especially one that expensive. Want me to dig deeper? Emily hesitated for half a second before typing. Yes. Quietly. She knew Alan. He had worked in cybersecurity for years, freelanced for investigators, and had a nose for tracking down the kind of information people paid to keep buried. If there was a paper trail, or a digital one, he'd find it. But that meant things were getting real. And dangerous. That evening, Emily arrived early for her shift. She'd never been the type to play detective. She didn't consider herself brave. Not like the nurses who'd volunteered for conflict zones or triage during pandemics. But something inside her couldn't let this go. She walked through the familiar hallways, past framed paintings of forests and peaceful lakes designed to calm the nerves. But now those same scenes felt artificial, even mocking. Trina at reception gave her a quick smile. "You're early." "Yeah." Wanted to prep meds ahead of time, Emily lied. But she wasn't going to the meds room. She walked straight to the archive room, a restricted space that housed old patient files, logs, and surveillance backups. It was usually locked. Today, someone had left it slightly ajar. A mistake? Or an opportunity? She stepped inside quietly. Rows of beige filing cabinets and shelves filled with hard drives lined the walls. The air smelled of old paper and chilled electronics. She found the section labeled Patient Logs, Room 309, and began flipping through the access logs from the past 6 months. Most of it was routine: nurses, janitors, doctors. But one entry stood out. Date, April 2nd. Time, 3:11 a.m. Visitor ID, redacted. No name. No staff badge. No camera footage. She double-checked the camera log. The hallway footage for that exact time was missing. Emily's breath caught in her throat. That wasn't just suspicious. That was intentional. Someone had gone into Mr. Wallace's room in the middle of the night and erased the evidence. Who? Why? And most important, what did they do to him? Back in the ward, things felt strangely quiet. Too quiet. Luis, the janitor, passed by and gave her a subtle nod, something unspoken in his eyes. She didn't stop him, but his message was clear: be careful. At 2 a.m., when the rest of the facility had gone still, Emily returned to room 309. She opened the door softly. The machines beeped steadily. Mr. Wallace was awake again. Eyes open. Just like before. She stepped in and whispered, "If you can hear me, blink once." Nothing. She moved closer. "Mr. Wallace, you're safe. I'm here to help you. Please, blink." Still nothing. But she could see it, his eyes were tracking her. Following her as she moved. That wasn't reflex. That was awareness. She stepped closer and took his hand gently. "Can you squeeze my hand?" There was a pause. Then the slightest pressure. Weak, but unmistakable. Her throat tightened. "Okay. Good. Can you do it again?" Nothing. Then, squeeze. Her heart raced. This was real. He was communicating. Barely, but it was happening. "Are you in danger?" she asked. Pause. Squeeze. Her stomach twisted. Did someone do this to you? Squeeze. Was it someone who works here? No response. Then. Squeeze. The grip was firmer this time. He was trying. Before she could ask more, the room's overhead lights flicked on. She turned in panic. Dr. Hess stood in the doorway. Tall. Clean-shaven. Professional to the point of coldness. His eyes were sharp and unreadable. Is there a reason you're here, Nurse Carr? He asked, voice calm but edged with something darker. Emily released Mr. Wallace's hand, her mind scrambling for an answer. He triggered the ventilator last night. I just came to check. Hess stepped into the room slowly. And you didn't think to report it? I was going to. But I wanted to monitor him first. He said nothing for a few seconds. Then he looked at the patient. His condition is unchanged. He has occasional eye reflexes and involuntary movements. We've seen this before. False hope. That's all. Emily knew it was a lie. But she forced herself to nod. Of course, doctor. He turned to her again, gaze lingering. You seem tired. Perhaps take the next shift off. Get some rest. Emily's skin prickled. That wasn't a suggestion. Understood. She left the room without another word. But as she walked down the hallway, her mind screamed at her. They know. They're watching. She was getting too close. The next day, she didn't rest. She drove to an old cafe on the east side of town, one with no security cameras, no Wi-Fi. She met Alan there. He brought a manila folder and a worried look. I don't like this, Em, he said as he sat across from her. You're poking at something designed to stay hidden. What did you find? He slid the folder toward her. Havenhall Group is a shell, like I said. But I traced some overlapping signatures on company registrations. There's a trail leading back to a law firm in D.C., one known for handling, let's just say, sensitive clients. But get this, one of the shell companies was once co-owned by someone named Thomas V. Wallace. Emily blinked. A son? Maybe. Possibly a nephew. Not a lot of info on him. But he disappeared 5 years ago. No public records, no photos, no news. Like he vanished. Emily flipped through the papers. Dates, bank transfers, real estate purchases, and then a final line. Acquisition of Blackridge Care Facility, 1 month after Mr. Wallace's stroke. Oh my God, she whispered. Alan leaned in. Emily, whoever's funding this, they don't want Charles Wallace dead. They want him hidden. Quiet. Alive, but silent. Emily's mind reeled. What if he knows something? Something they're afraid he'll say, if he wakes up. Alan hesitated. Then you're standing in the middle of something really dangerous. That night, Emily returned to work, acting like nothing had changed. But she had a plan. She brought a small voice recorder, hidden inside her badge holder. If Mr. Wallace could respond again, she'd get proof. At 3:12 a.m., she entered room 309. He was awake. She sat beside him, heart pounding. Mr. Wallace. I know someone did this to you. I'm going to help you. But I need you to answer me again. Squeeze my hand for yes. Stay still for no. Okay? Squeeze. She clicked the recorder on. Were you attacked? Squeeze. Was it someone in your family? Pause. Then. Squeeze. Emily closed her eyes. Was it your son? No response. Silence. Then, squeeze. Slow. Reluctant. Her voice trembled. Did you see something you weren't supposed to? Squeeze. And then, a knock. Not on the door. On the window. Room 309 was on the second floor. Emily turned in a rush. Nothing was there. Just the long white curtain swaying slightly, like it had been touched. She stepped toward it and pulled it open. Nothing. Darkness. But when she turned back, Mr. Wallace's eyes were closed. As if he had never been awake at all. And her recorder? It was gone. The next morning, Emily sat alone in her parked car, her hands still shaking. She hadn't told anyone what happened during the night shift. How could she? A knock on the second-story window. A stolen recorder. And Mr. Wallace suddenly, conveniently, unresponsive again. She had proof. And then it vanished. It was like the truth was one step ahead of her, watching her from the shadows, dismantling everything she tried to uncover. Emily took a deep breath and checked her phone. Alan had texted again. Need to talk. Urgent. Do not call. I'll come to you. Wait. That was unusual. Alan rarely sounded panicked. His texts were typically dry, efficient. This one had her gut twisting. She didn't go home. Instead, she waited outside a small, quiet bookstore she knew Alan frequented. He arrived 20 minutes later, wearing a hoodie and sunglasses. The moment he got in the passenger seat, he tossed his phone out the window. Emily stared at him. What the hell are you doing? They're tracking us, he said bluntly. They know what you're doing. They tried to breach my system last night, failed, but barely. This isn't just corporate secrecy, Em. This is intelligence-level stuff. Emily froze. What do you mean? I traced some of the shell companies deeper. There's a link to military contractors. Surveillance tech firms. And one name kept popping up, Wallace Tech. Emily frowned. That's his company. Charles Wallace. Was, Alan corrected. But guess who runs it now? His son. Thomas Wallace. And guess what else? 3 months before Charles's stroke, he filed a whistleblower report. Emily's eyes widened. Whistleblower? About what? Alan leaned in. Illegal surveillance. Blackmail. Selling sensitive biometric data to private security firms abroad. That's why he disappeared from public life. Emily's blood went cold. They silenced him. Not just silenced. They buried him in plain sight. And now, you're the only person he's communicated with in years. That's why they're watching you. Emily swallowed hard. So what do we do? Alan hesitated. There's more. Something I didn't put in a file. Because, well, I didn't believe it at first. What? I hacked into an old maintenance blueprint for Blackridge, just out of curiosity. I wanted to see how secure it really was. I found something weird, a sealed wing. No access. No cameras. Hidden behind a section of the West Corridor. Emily stared at him. What's in there? I don't know. But if someone wanted to hide something, or someone, that's where it'd be. Back at Blackridge, Emily's shift began normally. Too normally. Dr. Hess nodded to her in the hallway. Trina smiled at the desk. Even Louise gave her a small wave. Like nothing had happened. Like no one had tried to scare her off the night before. But now, Emily was done playing scared. She had one goal, to find the sealed wing. She waited until 3 a.m. The hour when the facility seemed to exhale, when the staff thinned out and the building settled into silence. Using an old janitor's map Alan had printed for her, she traced her path. She found it behind the west corridor utility room, a panel where a storage shelf stood bolted to the wall. She gently moved the shelf aside, revealing faint outlines in the plaster. Alan was right. A door had been sealed here, years ago. She grabbed a flashlight and began tapping along the wall. Thunk. Thunk. Hollow. She pried at the corner of a loose panel. To her shock, the drywall gave way, brittle and already cracked inside. The passage revealed a narrow hallway, pitch black and dust-filled. She stepped inside, heart pounding. The corridor smelled of mold and metal. A few broken light fixtures hung from the ceiling. Cobwebs clung to the corners. And then, she found a door. Old. Metal. Slightly rusted. No handle. Just a small slot in the center. She pushed it gently, and it creaked open. Inside was a room. Small, windowless, and stale with disuse. And at the center, an old hospital bed. Empty. No machines. No monitors. Just silence. Emily stepped in slowly, flashlight trembling in her hand. There was something on the floor near the bed. A box. Wooden. Locked with a rusted clasp. She knelt down and forced it open with a metal nail file from her badge. Inside, yellowed papers, brittle photographs, a journal. Handwritten. Bound in black leather. The name on the inside cover read, Charles Vincent Wallace. Emily flipped to the first page. The handwriting was jagged, urgent. If you're reading this, it means I failed. They came for me. My own son. My blood. I thought money could protect me. It didn't. What I know, what I've seen, could burn down entire industries. I should have spoken sooner. But now, this is all I can leave behind. She sat there, breath caught in her chest. This was it. The real truth. His words, unfiltered. She turned the next page. The project was called Sentinel. Started as a private defense contract. Biometric monitoring for high-risk threats. But it evolved. They began collecting data on civilians. Millions. Without consent. Every heartbeat, every breath, every fear, sold to the highest bidder. Emily's hands trembled. When I tried to shut it down, they erased everything. Financially. Legally. Then, personally. They poisoned me slowly. Staged the stroke. Took my voice. My son didn't just sign the order, he helped plan it. And now, I'm a ghost in a facility I used to own. Emily flipped page after page, notes, warnings, memories. It was all there. She felt sick. Angry. Heartbroken. This wasn't just a patient. This was a man buried alive. She had to get the journal out. She stuffed it into her bag, replaced the box, and backed out of the room. As she resealed the panel and pushed the shelf back, she heard footsteps. Quick. Heavy. Too deliberate to be routine. She ducked into the janitor closet nearby and held her breath. A figure passed by, dressed in black. Not a nurse. Not a doctor. Someone she'd never seen before. Armed. She waited until the footsteps faded. Then bolted. Back home, she locked all the doors, turned off her phone, and called Alan using a burner. I have the journal. He wrote everything down. There was a pause. Then we don't have much time. I need to go public. Too risky. If you do it the wrong way, they'll bury it. Or you. Emily looked down at the journal. I'm not backing down. There was silence on the line. Then Alan said quietly, there's a journalist I know. Used to work for a national paper. Got burned after uncovering a pharmaceutical scandal. He's off the radar now. But he's still connected. Can we trust him? Alan paused. He hates corruption more than anyone I've met. If we get him the journal, he'll take it from there. Emily nodded. Set it up. The next night, before her shift, Emily went to check on Mr. Wallace one last time. He was awake again. His eyes locked with hers, and this time, she saw relief. Tears welled in her eyes. I found your journal, she whispered. I know everything now. And I'm going to make sure the world knows too. She held his hand gently. I promise. His eyes blinked slowly, twice. She smiled. Then leaned in close. There's just one thing I need to know. If Thomas did this, why spare you? Pause. Then a weak, deliberate squeeze. It wasn't mercy. It was something worse. And then his monitor beeped. Just once. Nothing alarming. But Emily turned and saw a nurse at the door. Not from her team. Tall. Pale. Wearing a blank name badge. The same figure who passed her in the hallway the night before. He looked at Mr. Wallace. Then at her. Time's up, Nurse Carr, he said softly. Emily didn't move. Excuse me? You've been reassigned. The next morning, Alan woke to a single chilling message on his burner phone. She's gone. Jay. He blinked at the screen, trying to shake off sleep, but the words cut through his brain like ice water. Gone? He called Emily. Straight to voicemail. Tried her apartment. No answer. Tried her backup number. Nothing. She wouldn't just vanish. Not Emily. He rushed to her place, knocking first, then pounding when there was no reply. The door was unlocked. Inside, neat. Untouched. Too untouched. Her laptop was missing. Her journals, gone. The hidden USBs they'd prepped for the journalist, all wiped from the decoy drawer. Not stolen. Cleaned. As if she'd never existed. Alan's blood ran cold. He sat on the edge of her couch, hands in his hair. They got to her. And they didn't leave a trace. He stood, now in fight mode, and rushed out the door. If she was being held, there was still a chance. And only one place that made sense, Blackridge. Meanwhile, deep inside Blackridge, Emily Carr was conscious, barely. Her head pounded. Her wrists ached. Everything was blurry at first, then came the fluorescent buzz of overhead lights, flickering in rhythm with the spinning sensation in her head. She was in a room. No windows. Metal walls. A security camera in the corner, blinking red. Strapped to a medical gurney. Her uniform was gone. Replaced with gray scrubs. The kind they give patients. The kind she'd once helped others into. Now, she was the one restrained. A door opened. Dr. Hess walked in. But it wasn't the gentle, friendly Dr. Hess she knew. This version was colder. Stiffer. A different man altogether. Emily, he said, voice casual. We were worried about you. She stared at him. Where am I? He smiled. The secure wing. You've had a psychotic episode. You've been placed under evaluation. For your safety, of course. She pulled at the restraints. This is illegal. He shrugged. Only if you're sane. I'll scream. No one will hear you. That's the point. Emily stared at him in disbelief. You think you can make me disappear? You made yourself disappear, Emily, Dr. Hess said, approaching. You broke protocol. Tampered with a private patient's room. Entered unauthorized zones. Stole medical records. You've had a breakdown. Your story ends here. Quietly. Emily's chest tightened. Then the door opened again, and in stepped someone she never expected. Thomas Wallace. Young. Well-dressed. Cold eyes. Just like the photo she saw in the journal, but even more dangerous in person. He walked slowly, like a man inspecting cattle. Emily Carr, he said, glancing at her file. Top of your class. Former Army nurse. Transferred 4 times in 5 years. You like uncovering things, don't you? Emily met his gaze without flinching. Your father trusted me. Thomas's jaw twitched slightly. Just enough to register. Did he? He walked over to her, standing uncomfortably close. You're confused. You think you understand what's happening here. But my father was sick long before the stroke. He was paranoid. Delusional. Then why hide his journal? She snapped. He paused, then chuckled softly. You think that was his only journal? Emily blinked. Thomas leaned down and whispered, he left pieces all over the place. Little clues. Breadcrumbs. That was always his game. The question isn't what he left you, it's what you missed. He turned and walked toward the door. You'll be well cared for. Don't worry. You'll receive treatment. In time, this will all be a bad dream. He left. And the door locked behind him. Emily screamed until her voice cracked. But the room swallowed her sounds like water over a sinking ship. Back outside, Alan made his way into Blackridge through the service entrance. He'd done it once before. But now, he was sure they were expecting him. He didn't care. He wore a stolen maintenance badge and carried only a small tablet and a hidden camera in his glasses. He slipped into the West Wing, then down a utility corridor Emily once marked on a napkin. There was a door at the end, newly installed security. No badge access. Fingerprint only. He pulled out his tablet. Plugged in a bypass connector. Waited. Security system pinged. One fingerprint, T. Wallace. Another, unknown. Possibly Hess. Alan couldn't clone those. But he could fake a power failure. He uploaded a looped video to the hallway cameras and triggered a power surge. The door unlocked for 3 seconds. He slid inside just in time. The hallway beyond was silent. Sterile. Like a tomb. He passed closed doors, hearing distant beeping, a woman sobbing, a man moaning quietly behind glass. Then he found her. Room 9B. He opened the door with a makeshift keycard bypass and stepped inside. Emily. She blinked at him, weak. Her mouth gagged. Her wrists bruised. He rushed to her, pulling off the restraints, tearing off the medical tapes. She collapsed into his arms. You came, she whispered, voice barely audible. Of course I did, he said, heart pounding. We have to go. Now. He helped her to her feet. She staggered, but managed a nod. Alan led her out through the same corridor, but alarms triggered almost instantly. We've got 30 seconds, he said, dragging her forward. They burst through the exit just before guards arrived, slipping into the maintenance tunnel. They ducked, crawled, ran. They made it out through a storm drain behind the building, muddy, soaked, but alive. 3 hours later, they were hiding in a motel off Highway 17. Emily was showered, her hands wrapped in gauze, sipping hot tea. Alan paced. They'll come after us harder now, he said. But we've got what they didn't erase. He pointed to a small hard drive. The files I recovered from the journal's last GPS logs. There's a third location. A property in Vermont. Emily sat up straighter. His cabin? Maybe. Or a safe house. But he left something there. One of the journal entries ended with a strange phrase. Alan pulled it up. When in doubt, return to where I first buried the truth. They looked at each other. A buried secret. A final clue. They had to go. But neither of them knew that Thomas Wallace had already activated something much darker in response. Back at Wallace Tech headquarters, Thomas met in a glass-walled room with two other men. One in a military coat. The other in a crisp black suit. She escaped, Thomas said flatly. The man in black didn't react. We expected as much. She has the data. She has the drive. Not all of it, the military man said. Not what matters most. Thomas clenched his fists. Then what do we do? The man in black smiled thinly. We activate Sentinel Protocol 3. Thomas blinked. But that was never tested on civilians. The man's smile widened. Then it's time we start. That night, Emily and Alan drove toward Vermont, unaware they were being followed, not by cars or drones, but by something far more invasive. Inside their rented sedan, an embedded chip in the dashboard camera silently activated. Their heartbeats. Breathing. Eye dilation. Every stress response was being monitored. Just like Charles Wallace warned. Sentinel wasn't just data collection. It was control. And they were the next targets. The road to Vermont was endless and winding, cloaked in thick pine forests and swirling fog. Emily sat silently in the passenger seat, her thoughts a storm she couldn't calm. She could still feel the cold restraints on her wrists, the fluorescent lights burning into her memory. But now, she was free. And she was angry. Alan glanced at her every so often, concern etched in his features. You all right? He finally asked. She nodded slowly. No. But I will be. Then, more quietly, we have to finish this. They arrived at the cabin just after midnight. It was a modest, weathered structure hidden at the edge of a long-forgotten forest trail. Moss crept up the walls. One shutter hung askew. It looked abandoned. But something about it felt, watched. Alan got out first, flashlight in hand. This is the right place. Matches the coordinates in the journal's last log. Emily followed, a crowbar clutched tightly in her hand. No more surprises. The front door was locked, but Alan found a spare key under a cracked stone marked with the letter W. Inside, the air was stale, but the cabin was clean, too clean. Not dusty. No cobwebs. A stocked fridge. Someone had been here. Emily noticed a framed photo near the fireplace, Charles Wallace, smiling, with a much younger Thomas beside him. The boy's eyes were bright, hopeful. A different person. She turned to Alan. What if he wasn't always like this? What if something changed him? Alan said nothing. They both knew the answer, power. The cabin had 2 floors. Upstairs were 2 bedrooms and an old study. Emily searched the study while Alan explored the basement. In the study, she opened drawers lined with handwritten letters, old blueprints, even a childhood drawing of a machine labeled Safe Mind. She recognized the symbol from Charles's journal, an open eye inside a broken triangle. It wasn't just art. It was a system. She dug deeper and found a hollow space under the floorboard. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was a sleek, black hard drive and a handwritten letter addressed to whomever finds this. Emily sat down, heart racing, and read. If you are reading this, it means I have failed. But it also means you have courage. Sentinel is not a defense project. It is a weapon, one capable of shaping thought, behavior, even memory. My son. I wanted to believe he would use it to help people. But his hunger grew. He sees freedom as disorder, chaos. He believes control brings peace. I couldn't stop him, so I disappeared. This drive contains the original build of Sentinel V.1, the one with the failsafe. It's incomplete. But if you find the original blueprint, you can stop what's coming. Go to the core. Trust no one. C.W. She stared at the letter, trembling. The original build? A failsafe? This was bigger than she thought. It wasn't just about exposing truth anymore. It was about stopping something dangerous. Alan, she shouted. In the basement, Alan had just discovered an underground vault. The hatch was rusted shut, sealed with a fingerprint pad and retinal scanner, both dead. But someone had rigged a bypass switch to the side, long since disabled. When Emily arrived, still clutching the letter, they stared at the vault in silence. "This is the core," Alan whispered. She nodded. "Let's get in." It took hours, but finally, using a thermal cutter Alan had brought, they cracked the outer latch. The door creaked open, revealing a dark tunnel leading downward. They descended carefully, flashlight beams flicking across steel walls and exposed wires. The air was colder down here. Denser. At the end of the tunnel was a single room, small, round, filled with blinking monitors, circuit boards, and a single massive machine with a neural headset draped over the chair. In the corner, another hard drive plugged into a terminal. The original Sentinel. Complete. Emily walked toward it and felt a chill run down her spine. "This isn't surveillance," she said. "It's manipulation. Emotion tracking. Neural feedback. It doesn't just observe. It responds." Alan scrolled through the data. "This code, it's live. Someone's running a version of this now." They stared at each other. It wasn't hypothetical anymore. It was happening. Before they could disconnect the drive, a warning flashed on screen. "System access detected, trace initiated." Alan swore. "They found us." Suddenly, a loud metallic thud came from upstairs. Then footsteps. Heavy. Measured. Emily grabbed the hard drive, stuffing it into her bag. "Back tunnel," Alan hissed. They ran through the side exit and emerged into the woods. A helicopter roared above. Searchlights swept the treetops. Dogs barked in the distance. Emily and Alan ducked behind fallen logs and crawled through the undergrowth, moving with the desperation of hunted animals. They didn't stop until they reached the river, miles from the cabin. Soaked, muddy, and shaking, they collapsed under a fallen tree trunk, trying to catch their breath. "They'll burn it," Emily said. "The whole cabin. Then we're the last link." They looked at the bag between them. Inside, the original Sentinel build. And the key to bringing the whole conspiracy down. The next morning, they arrived at the home of Leah Ashford, a former whistleblower turned digital ghost. She'd exposed a major government cover-up 5 years earlier, then vanished. Alan had tracked her through old contacts. She owed him. She was the best hacker he knew. Her place was off-grid, buried in a coastal cliffside and camouflaged by wild forest. Leah opened the door, saw Emily's bruised face and Alan's exhausted eyes, and said only, "Come inside. No questions yet." Over coffee, Emily told her everything, from Charles Wallace's journal to the secret vault, the neural tech, the pursuit. Leah didn't flinch. She just nodded slowly. "I've heard whispers about Sentinel," she said. "Thought it was a myth. AI-enhanced behavioral correction. Could be deployed through any device. Ads. News. Medical alerts. Even dreams." Emily leaned forward. "Can you break it?" Leah tapped the hard drive with one finger. I can do more than that. I can send the world a message. But as she connected the drive to her dark server, something strange happened. The screen flashed. Static. Then a voice, distorted, robotic, came through the speaker. You were warned. Now you'll listen. Then silence. And the screen went black. Leah yanked the cable out. It's self-defending. Someone built it to counter-hack. Alan stood, pacing. Then what do we do? Leah turned to Emily. If you want the truth to survive, you need to go analog. Emily blinked. What do you mean? Broadcast it. But old school. Radio waves. Unhackable. There's a Cold War station on Wolf's Peak. Still running. Barely. If we can reach it, we can send the truth. Emily's hands tightened into fists. Then that's where we're going. That night, as they gathered supplies and planned the ascent to Wolf's Peak, they didn't realize Thomas Wallace was already in place. He sat in a control room, eyes locked on the signal pulses he'd traced from Leah's server. His security chief approached. Orders? Thomas didn't look up. They'll run. Good. Let them. We'll let the world see what happens to those who dig too deep. But sir, they've got the source code. Thomas turned, eyes cold as ice. Not all of it. And he smiled. Because the part Emily and Alan didn't know? Sentinel wasn't just a system. It was already inside them. The cold wind bit through Emily's jacket as she and Alan trudged up the steep, rocky path to Wolf's Peak. Night had fully fallen, and the only light came from their worn flashlights flickering ahead and the faint glow of the distant radio tower perched atop the summit like a lone sentinel. Emily's legs ached, but she didn't dare stop. Every step closer felt heavier. Not just physically but in her mind. A dull throb pulsed behind her temples, a pressure that hadn't gone away since they'd touched the Sentinel drive. It whispered lies, nudged her thoughts sideways, and twisted her memories until she wasn't sure what was real anymore. Emily, you okay? Alan's voice was low, edged with worry. He scanned her face in the flashlight's beam. She forced a smile, but inside, panic was rising. I'm fine. Just tired. Alan didn't seem convinced, but he said nothing. He was fighting the same invisible battle. They both were. They reached the radio station's gate, a rusted barrier and a faded sign that read, Wolf's Peak Broadcast Center, authorized personnel only. Alan hacked the lock swiftly with a pocket tool Leah had given them. The door creaked open, revealing a cramped control room filled with analog dials, cassette decks, and a handful of flickering monitors that looked almost relic-like in the digital age. Emily let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. This is it. Leah had told them the station still broadcast at low power, a signal too weak to reach most cities but strong enough to slip through the cracks in the network. It was their last chance to send the truth, the original Sentinel code, the warnings Charles Wallace had hidden, the proof of manipulation and control. Alan powered up the old transmitter while Emily prepared the data files Leah had encrypted for broadcast. Once this goes live, Emily said, there's no turning back. Alan glanced at her, eyes full of exhausted hope. We stop this, or it stops us. As the transmitter hummed to life, a sudden noise froze them in place. Static crackled through the speakers, then a chilling voice broke through the feedback. You cannot escape. You are all controlled. Resistance is futile. Emily's heart slammed against her ribs. That Sentinel, Alan whispered. It's inside the system. It knows we're here. Then we make noise louder than it can drown, Emily said fiercely. She hit the broadcast button and began to speak into the microphone, her voice steady but charged with raw urgency. This is Emily Grant, former nurse to Charles Wallace. You may not know us, but we've uncovered the truth behind Sentinel, the system designed to control your thoughts, your memories, your very will. Charles Wallace tried to stop it. He left us this code. We're broadcasting it now, hoping you'll listen, because if we don't fight back, we lose who we are." Her words crackled through the radio waves, sent out into the night sky, searching for ears willing to hear. Suddenly, Emily staggered, clutching her head. The pressure inside her skull flared like wildfire. "Emily?" Alan rushed to her side. Her vision blurred. The voice, the robotic voice, returned, louder this time, but now inside her mind. "You belong to us. Let go. Submit." "No," she gasped, shaking her head. "Not now. Not ever." Alan grabbed the headset and tore it off her. "We're stronger than this." They didn't know how long the broadcast continued, but somewhere in the static, something shifted. Hours later, dawn broke over the mountain, painting the sky soft pink and orange. Emily and Alan sat slumped by the transmitter, exhausted but alive. The radio crackled. A voice. Not robotic. Human. "This is a message from someone who knows the truth. We're awake. We're fighting. You're not alone." Emily's eyes filled with tears. Alan smiled weakly. It worked. But the battle wasn't over. Back in the city, Thomas Wallace stood in his penthouse, staring at multiple monitors showing news feeds and social media exploding with rumors and leaked data. His face was pale but defiant. "They broadcast the code," he said slowly. "The original build. But it's incomplete. The failsafe is gone." His assistant looked alarmed. "So the control is permanent?" Thomas nodded. "For now. But the truth is out. And that scares me." In the days that followed, reports flooded in. Glitches in smart devices, people questioning memories, unexplained emotional shifts, even groups forming to resist the growing influence of Sentinel. Emily and Alan watched the news from Leah's safe house, battered but hopeful. "Do you think it'll end?" Emily asked quietly. Alan shook his head. "No. But we started something. A spark. And sparks grow into fires." She smiled faintly. "Then let's keep fighting." Weeks later, Emily returned to the hospital room where she had cared for Charles Wallace, the silent millionaire who had become a prisoner of his own invention. She placed a hand gently on his motionless arm. "He's gone," a nurse said softly behind her. Emily nodded. "But his story isn't. Not anymore." She turned away, feeling the weight of everything they'd uncovered, but also the hope of a future where truth and freedom might still win. The lesson. Sometimes, the greatest battles are not fought with guns or armies, but in the silent war for our minds and hearts. Technology can bind us or liberate us. Secrets buried deep can change the world, or bury it in darkness. But as long as there are those willing to uncover the truth, to stand against control and manipulation, there is hope. Because freedom, real freedom, is not given. It is taken. And fought for. Every day.